For this small example application, we're going to use the free Blazor components of Syncfusion, who sponsored this video. So thank you very much, Syncfusion. But let me get this straight. I will tell you what I like and what I also don't like about their components. And again, you can use all of them free of charge, even for commercial purposes. For more details, check out the links below in the video description. And now let me show you how this works. All right, so first, how do you get a free license? Well, this is pretty simple. You see here, syncfusion.com is the place to be. And then you go to pricing, and then please go to the right tab here, community license. And as you can see, you can claim your free license. When I open this now, in my case in an incognito window, because I am already signed in, then here you can see that you can sign in with your LinkedIn account, for instance, and then you just go to your dashboard, and here you see under license and downloads, you could actually download the Essential Studio Enterprise Edition. So this is a tool in essence where you can then use templates of Syncfusion, but we won't do it that way. In this big tutorial, I just want to use the NuGet packages, so you don't have to install anything apart from, of course, the .NET SDK and Visual Studio. And then we are able to also use all the Syncfusion components for Blazor. And now you already see it here, get license key. And with that, you select your platform, for instance, Blazor, and then the version, and then get license key. And then you will get your key, and then you can copy and paste this thing, and in a minute you will see what to do with that long license key. And then this works. You can use everything here, even for commercial purposes. So now let's create our project. So in Visual Studio 2022, also the community edition, we create a new project, and what I want to do here is use the new empty template here that came with a .NET 7 actually. Before, we've got the Blazor WebAssembly app template with already a navigation and pages, HTTP calls, and so on. But here now I really want to start from scratch with the new Blazor empty template. And if you don't see it here in your recent project templates, of course, you can always enter Blazor and then Blazor WebAssembly app empty. That's the one we want to use. We give this thing a name like Blazor Syncfusion CRM, for instance. You will find the source code down below in the video description. It's available on GitHub. So then click next, and here we want to use .NET 7, configure for HTTPS and ASP.core hosted, because I really want to create a controller or several more controllers that will then connect to a SQL Server database. So the complete stack, full stack here for this example application. Let's hit create. And then the big question is, how do we now use the Syncfusion components and our new license key? First, you see it here. This is a rather small solution now. We don't have, for instance, the weather forecast controller, which is typical for the default templates here. Only the index page that is saying hello world. And for the server, we only got our program CS, no controllers here. Not really a shared class. This is really just an example. So let's start from scratch, really. But first, again, if we now want to make use of a Syncfusion, there it is. Again, from the main page here, syncfusion.com, we can go to learning and support, and then we've got demos and documentation. For instance, let's just go to documentation, and in here then Blazor for the web. And here you already see some interesting stuff, the API reference, NuGet packages, but let's just go to getting started, and we wanna use a web assembly application in Visual Studio. And what do we get here? Well, they do it with the Blazor calendar example application, and we actually did all that. But now, as you can see here, the first thing is installing the NuGet package or several packages. This is totally up to you. So let's have a look again. Let me just close the other tabs and back to Visual Studio. For our client project now, we right click, manage NuGet packages, then to browse. I always do this mistake. Make sure to be on the browse tab, and then we can enter Syncfusion Blazor, for instance, and there you see it already. We've got Syncfusion Blazor core, data, themes, buttons, and so on, all the components we're able to use. But it's a bit tricky here. Scroll to the top. It is actually scrolled at, I don't know why, in my case it is scrolled to this position here, Syncfusion Blazor core, and you can totally use all these single NuGet packages if you just want to use the buttons, for instance. But for this example, we can also just use Syncfusion Blazor. So this is, as you can read it here, this package provides 70+ Syncfusion Blazor native components, so everything is in here, and I think this is totally fine in our case. So we've got everything installed in essence, and with that then we can use the references in the import razor and really use every single Blazor component. All right, and now to be able to use all this, we have to add something here. For instance, we start with the program CS. Let me just close the other files here, and just to make sure that you can also see it, the next steps are, all right, they start with the imports razor. So let's just do it that way as they recommend it here. So we go to the imports razor, and in here now we add first the Syncfusion Blazor reference. But when we now or later want to use single components, different components like the buttons, themes, and so on, then we also have to add these references here as well. So it is not done with this line here alone. After that, the program CS, as you can see here, and we have to add this line, builder services, and then add Syncfusion Blazor. So again, program CS, add this thing here. We've got the reference automatically. Visual Studio, thank you very much for that. And then comes the style sheets, and here we have to pay attention, because if, for instance, you just imported or used the NuGet package Syncfusion Blazor themes, then you need this line. But as you can see here, when you're using Syncfusion Blazor, as we did, we actually need this complete line. So let's just copy this. And now in our index HTML, in the head section, we add this style sheet here. All right. And then we also need the script reference. And here it's actually the same. We've got the complete package. So let me just copy this thing here. And now down here, we also add this one. All right, what else? Components, of course. But let's just see how this looks for now. We save everything, run this, and this is our result. Not that exciting, I know. Let's just stop this again. And now let's try to use a component. The very first thing I would like to add is a navigation bar. And for that, we've got the so-called AppBar here. And as you can see already in this documentation, you can go to every single component and then to getting started. And this is first a pretty similar example, or pretty similar code documentation stuff we already have seen on the page before. But after that, we see add Blazor app component, for instance. And here now you can see that we need the reference for navigations. So let's just add this thing down here. That's great. And after that, we see an example. All right. So let's just use similar code here, and then let's have a look at how this already works. We go to the Solution Explorer, and in here now, I really want to add a new component. Of course, I could add the application bar, the navigation bar here to the main layout already, or we just create a new component. So let's just do that. We create a new folder. This thing is called shared because this is a shared component we can see on different pages. And in here now, add a new razor component. Call this thing like navbar for navigation bar. And now here, let's remove this. And in here now, we just say SfAppBar. There it is already. All right, so this is our application bar. Maybe we can also change the color already with color mode, and then app bar color, and then primary. All right. And now I have to add this to the main layout, of course. So this is rather simple. Let me just add the navbar here on top. And of course, we can add this little reference here as well to the imports razor, maybe up here, add using, and that should be it. Now we've got everything, and now let's run this one more time. There we are. And what is this? This application was built using a trial version of Syncfusion Essential Studio. To remove the license validation message permanently, a valid license key must be... Yeah, of course. Of course I didn't forget this. I just wanted to show you what is actually happening if you're using Syncfusion here without a license key. You can try everything, but well, you would see this message, and this is not that nice, right? So let's now add our license key, and for that we can again use the documentation here, and I think it's this one. Yeah, this is the one. This is the line we need: Syncfusion licensing and so on. So register license key in Blazor application, and you have to put this in here in the Blazor, in the programs. Yes, that was the word I was looking for. So let's go back to Visual Studio. Maybe stop the app again, and now here in our program CS file, and then down here we just enter this thing. And now let me also copy my license key. This is the one from the beginning of this tutorial. There it is. And now let's run this one more time. There we are. And this is our beautiful AppBar. Isn't that great? Well, of course, we have to put some content in there and maybe also change the style a little bit so we do not have the margin and the padding here. So let's just do that next. In our navigation bar, now the idea is to add buttons, and for that we have to go to the imports first and also add the buttons reference here. And now buttons, well, of course, that take us to another page. So for that we need the navigation manager first. So with add inject, we inject the navigation manager and also call this thing navigation manager. And in our code block now, I want to create a new method, not navigation, navigate to page, and then in here a string with the actual page. And then we can use this method for our buttons to navigate the user to the certain page. So navigation manager it shall be, and then navigate to, and in here now our page. And now regarding the buttons, the first one, for instance, is typically an SF. You see there's a pattern here, Syncfusion button. All right. And here now we can set a CSS class first, for instance. So CSS class, and then a typical class here is inherit. So with this thing you would inherit the style or the theme you're currently using. So this just looks a bit better. Maybe I can just show you in a second how this would look if we would not use the inherit class here. Then we can choose an icon, of course. So icon CSS it is. And in here now, let me use icons. This is a library we get with Syncfusion. And then the home icon, and then the content here is also called home. So this is actually the text of our button. We do not add the text here. We add it in our content parameter here. After that, we can also choose what should happen on click, and here comes our beautiful navigate to page method. We need a parameter here, so this is done with a lambda expression, and here we call navigate to page, and here this is simply the forward slash, and we're missing a parenthesis here. And now here also the @ sign, or another option would be to use single quotation marks. This, just as a side note, this would actually, if Visual Studio lets me, also work. All right, but if you want to use double quotes, then make sure to use the @ symbol here. All right, so this is our first button, and actually we can already close this thing like that. Maybe this looks a bit better then. Let's just save this and maybe stop the application, because this is one little thing. I don't know if this happens because of Visual Studio or Syncfusion or whatever it is, but when I created this bigger application, then sometimes it could not really reload the page. So I had some issues with that, and then I had to stop the application and then restart it manually, but no, it worked. So this is our home button now. Doesn't this look nice? All right, and now I would say we just copy and paste this button here, because now what I want to do here, a little CRM system, a customer relationship management system tool, whatever the perfect name for this thing is, where we will have a look at contacts. So this then might be the user icon. Again, the text here is contacts, and the page then will also be contacts. After that, I also want to display a map with some markers where we can have a look, where are these contacts placed. Maybe this is fun, and this is really a great feature, a great component of Syncfusion, and it's done really, really fast. So I really like that. Not notes, this is the next one. Map is the one. Then also call this thing here map. And the last one, now I already told you what I wanted to do here, is notes. So for every contact, I want to be able to create notes. Maybe something like, I don't know, this user wanted to buy a specific thing from me, but then he or she didn't. So maybe I should send another newsletter, email, or follow-up email, whatever it is. Maybe you already know how CRM works. And of course, this is really a tiny, tiny, tiny glimpse of CRM features. There are so many more features that you need actually and can build into a CRM. Anyways, these are our buttons. And what I like after that is use the AppBar spacer. So the spacer, here it is. And what this thing does is it will, well, add a spacer and separate the buttons up here. So these will then be on the left side of the application bar. And after that, I will see something on the right side. And this shall simply be a button to create a new contact, because I think maybe this is an action you wanna use most of the time, probably, maybe, I don't know. Maybe you know more than me, and if so, please write it down in the comments. So I am open for new suggestions. So we've got no method for that for now. So let me just close the button here, save everything again, and then let's have a look. This looks great. All right, so we've got our home page, we've got the contacts. Of course, there is nothing there yet, and new contact as well. So our application bar already done. And just as a side note again, I wrote this code here now, but if whenever you want to have a look, how does this actually work, you can either go to the documentation here, and there are some how-tos, getting started, native events, and so on. And what I also really, really like is the demo page here. So for Blazor Syncfusion, you can already see it. The first one here is the data grid, and you see regarding the data grid, we will also use the data grid, data binding, columns, and so on. Whatever you want to change, there are lots and lots of demos here. But what we wanted to do is actually pretty simple buttons, right? So maybe here for our buttons, we can see, okay, this is how they can look. See that with an icon and so on. Appearance is a bit different. So what about this thing? I can click on this, and then let me just show the or display, see the source code, and this is how it actually looks, right? So lots and lots of stuff and references really where you can learn how to use all these components. But enough now with the documentation and the demos and all that stuff. You can look it up, of course, and I guess I will look up some things throughout this tutorial here. But now let's go back to our application really. And now the next thing I would actually like to do is change the CSS here, because I really can't stand the padding and margin here, and also the font. Maybe we can change that as well. So let's go back to Visual Studio real quick. And now here in our app CSS, this is our default app CSS from the empty Blazor project. So you see a little bit is here, but now up here, I would like to first, regarding the body, I would like to set the margin to 0, padding 0, and regarding the font family, I would like to, well, maybe we can set this to Roboto, Arial, Helvetica. Yeah, this, oh, where is it? Oh, there it is. Yeah, something like that maybe. I think this looks better. And also one more thing here now, the margin, 12 pixels for the main element, because as you can see, where is it here? We've got the main element here with the body of our page. And now let's go back. Yeah, much better, right? Okay, so I think we can work with that. And I forgot one more thing I wanted to show you in our navbar. Now when I do not enter this class here, for instance, then this looks like that. See that? Not that nice, right? So with that class, the component knows, all right, we've got an app bar with the certain color or style, and when we choose this CSS class here now, then we see that the button changes. And I gotta say, hot reload works really great now. Don't know why, but I like it. But let's not celebrate too much, because we've still got a lot to do. So let's see how it works out. So we've got our app bar. Maybe we can also change the index page here. Index eraser is not hello world anymore. Now we want to welcome our user to Blazing CRM. Isn't that a great name? And after that, we have to change something else. I already told you I want to use contacts and notes in our application, also maps, but we will build the maps with the help of our contact information. So what we really want to store in our little CRM application here are contacts and notes. So the typical way now for the default example applications is to create new models here in our shared project. So right click this shared project here, and now we add a new class, and the first one is the contact. Let's make this public. All right, and now the other one is the note. So note CS it is, and also make this a public class. All right, so first let's add properties to our contact class like that. Now, since we also want to store this in the database, it is crucial to add an ID here. We will start just for a short period of time with mock data here, but then we will build everything you need to use Entity Framework and SQL Server to build this complete stack. So first, we've got an ID. Great. And now let's really make this simple. A string with a first name. By default, this is an empty string. Let me copy this 2 times because I want to also add a last name and then also a nickname. After that, another string. Let's give this thing this name. It's the place. And then I want to see a date time, another build date time for the date of birth. Maybe you guessed it, I want to use the date picker here for this thing. Then we've got date time, date created, and by default we can set this to date time now. And then I want to add a list of notes. So prop and then list note notes. And this is already a new list of node. And I want to add one more thing, one little attribute here called JSON ignore. Now, what does that mean? Well, when we need this package here, as you've seen, JSON serialization, when we get the contacts, right? We see now I get the errors with hard reload. Let me just stop the app. All right, so now what I want to do in this application is I want to receive these contacts. I actually don't want to include the nodes. Now, why is that? Because when we add or implement the node model in a minute, we will also have the contact there. And when we then again include the contact, and this is what I definitely want to do in this application, then we get a cycle, right? And this cycle leads to an error. So when we receive only the data of the contact, then I really want to ignore the node. Now, the better way, the better practice for that would be to simply use DTOs, data transfer objects. And in this case, then we can really define what we want to see and what not. For instance, the date created is not really interesting for us on the client, but this is something for a more comprehensive course, maybe. And now, while I'm already at it, we're not done actually with this model, because what you can see here, date created, right? So maybe you know it already, we want to implement all the CRUD operations, meaning created contact, read contacts, so receiving them from the database, update them, and also delete them. So what we could do now is not only add date created, but also date updated, date deleted, and also an is deleted flag, because actually I do not really want to delete the contact from the database, the complete entry. I just want to use a soft delete here and actually just update this thing. So now here, date modified is also a great name, but I called it date updated. This thing is nullable, of course, because maybe there is a situation where this thing hasn't been updated yet. So this would be for the update, and again, date time nullable for date deleted. And the last thing is actually a Boolean flag called is deleted. All right, and we will add something else later for the map. I can already tell you that we need the latitude and the longitude data, but let's do this later, really. All right, now the node. So in here, this is not that big. We've got an ID again, and then we've got a string, and I want to set this to required string. So we really need text here. And then we also need a relationship to our contact. So for that, we first add a nullable integer, because it could be the case that this is a node without a contact actually. So for that case, nullable contact ID, and here now the actual contact, also nullable, like almost like that. And in here also I would like to add a date created, and this would be rather simple because I really don't want to add the rest of the operations here. So we can create nodes, read them and delete them, really delete them, not just a soft delete, and do not update them. All right, I hope you're fine with that. So this is now our node ID, text, contact ID, contact for the relationship, and then date created. So we've got a one-to-many relationship. One contact can have many, many nodes. And now the next step is actually create a data grid, because now let's do some Syncfusion component stuff again. And after that, we will move everything to the database. So first, real quick, the .NET Web Academy starts soon. It's an online program where we cover all things .NET Web development with Blazor, Git, Azure, and more. Pretty much everything you need to know if you want to land a job in the .NET Web development world. And also the exclusive .NET Web Academy community for all your questions. And if you want to be the first to know when it opens, and if you want to get a discount, then make sure to subscribe to my newsletter or check out the link below to get a spot spot on the waiting list. Thank you very much. And now back to the tutorial. Again, the imports razor because I want to use the data grids. And for the data grids, we need the grids reference here. And then we need a new page actually. And this would be then the contacts page. So in here, pages, we right click and add a razor component. Call this contacts. We add our page directive. And this is now called contacts. And we see it here. This is the right URL or the right route, let's say. Okay, now let's have a quick look at the demo here again. We've already seen the data grid and this is how it can look. Got the columns here, we got check boxes, icons or images, so lots and lots of stuff. We got filters here. Great stuff really we can do. And the source code, as you can see, is here, but let's not copy and paste this thing. Let's do this step by step because this is, in my opinion, the best way to learn. So let's just close this. And in here now, we really say create the SfGrid. So now what is actually happening when we just do it like that, all right? Nothing. As you can see, we need something here, and this is a value. We need the data source. So let's say a data source is now grid data, and we do not have a grid data. So let's add grid data down here in the code block. And this is one of the rare times where I really copy and paste stuff. So as you can see, and maybe we can add this using in our imports again, real quick. There we are. All right, and now in here, we see the grid data. Let me close this. Now the error is gone. And this is our list of contacts. And I did this because really I want to save you a bit of time at least. And here we see Peter Parker, the nickname, the place, date created is not necessary here because we get this as a default value. And now this is the most or the simplest data grid, right? So let's just see how this actually looks. There's our app, and now we go to contacts. There's our page, and this is our data grid. It already is here, but as you can see, it just grabs all the properties. So maybe if you would use a data transfer object, then this would look a bit better. But then again, the property names are not that nice, right? We've got first name without the blank in between. So we should really decide by ourselves manually what columns we actually want to use. And for that, we use another component called grid columns. All right. And in here now, for every column we want to display, we create or add the grid column component here. All right. The first one, in this specific case, what I want to do is I want to add a button to be able to edit the contact. All right. So this gets a fixed width of 60. And in here now, I can already use a template like that. And here, a new scope, where I can then say, I actually want to get the current contact of this row and do it like that. Var contact is the current context as contact. And now I just create a button where I can use this contact. So again, the CSS class, we set this to e inherit, and then the icon CSS is again e icons almost, and then e edit, and then on click we want to call a certain function, but let's cover this in a minute. This is our template, and now the next column I want to use is actually the first name. To do that, wait, I have to close this. This was the wrong place. put this here. Yep, now it's correct. So here now we define the actual field we want to use. This is the first name, and we can also add a header text. So this is the caption, if you like, for the column. And here now we can just add the blank, and that's it. All right, so this is how you just define the most simple column. Also, let's add the last name, the nickname, the place, and date of birth. Now this is then a bit different. So here first the last name, then the nickname and the place. And again, we call this simply place. This is the nickname. This is the last name. Regarding the date, we say date of birth. And we also call this date of birth. And what we could also do is actually change the format, but let's have a look first. How does it look now? Oh, it is rebuilding. There we are. It looks better, I guess. We've got the first name, last name, nickname, place, and then the date. Yeah, format is not the best, so maybe we can change that. I leave that up to you. Don't know where you are and where you are watching, but let's just use this format here. Maybe someone is happy then. It is not rebuilding, so let's just restart the application. And now, yeah, now we see another format. Great. And as you can see here, we have a button. So maybe let's also add real quick a little method called edit contact. For that, we need the navigation manager again. So let's just inject this thing. Inject a navigation manager. All right. And now maybe down here, we add a method called edit contact with an ID. And this simply leads then to another page where we then will implement an edit form where we really can edit this contact. All right, so navigation manager, navigate to, and then contacts, almost ID, not ID, edit, and then comes the ID. All right, save this, and we stop the app. Okay. And in here now, we need our on click. So on click it is. And here again, a lambda expression where we say edit contact. And in here now, contact ID. And I'm pretty sure this is not null. So this would then be our button. And when we now open our application, when we click here, we're moving to this page, and of course it's not there yet, but it will be. All right, in a couple of minutes. All right, so this is already nice. Really, how many minutes did it take? It's not lots of time, and we've got a data grid that looks really nice. All right, and we already made some changes. I also want to make some more changes because in the demo we've seen something about filtering and searching and so on, and this is also pretty amazing. In just a few, not really lines, but just a few characters, we can add something else. So first, what I would like to do is add grid filter settings, and we do this like that. Grid filter settings. And in here now, we say the type is Syncfusion Blazor grids filter type checkbox. That's the one. So let's see what is now happening. Maybe we have to rebuild it, but again, I think you won't see much, right? Nothing changed. And the question is, why is that? Well, we also have to add one more thing, and you can do this here on top. Allow filtering, set this to true, Come on. True. And as you can see, we also got a bit more stuff. Allow Excel export, grouping, multi-sorting, paging, and so on. PDF export. So lots and lots of great stuff. Now, of course, we have to stop this thing and start it again. There we are. And now you see these are the checkboxes, right? And now let's just say I only want to see Bruce, and there's Bruce. Same for the last name, the place, date of birth, and so on. And now we can clear this. And what I really like is here the search option. For that, we add a toolbar, and in here now we add a new list of strings, and this is then our search, like that. Parenthesis missing. Now this should be it. All right, let's save this. All right, so now is the time where we have to restart the application by ourselves. So maybe we do this for future changes. Rebuilding, and there's our search bar. Now I can enter Peter, for instance, hit return, and there's Peter. And this is for every property. So now I can also enter New York, for instance. Of course, I got Peter again, but what about Gotham? There's Bruce Wayne as Batman in Gotham City. Isn't that nice? I really like this search bar in particular. All right, got some experience with other components, component libraries, and this I really like. Okay, but what I don't like really is that I have to restart the application. Not sure if it's Visual Studio or Syncfusion. Maybe you know more, but this is a great feature. All right, so far we've got already great components from Syncfusion, but now what I want to do is move this data here to the server, to a database actually. Well, it's locally on my machine, but I think you get the idea. So what we need for that are new NuGet packages. We have to install some packages to be able to use Entity Framework with SQL Server, and we have to install the .NET Entity Framework tools. And I would say we do this next. So first in our, well, you know what? First, let's stop the application, and then we can go to our server project here and then manage NuGet packages. And in here again, the browse tab, we need something, and that would be Microsoft. There it is already. This one, we can use this one, but maybe we first install this thing here. Microsoft Entity Framework Core. Still the core term is used internally, although with .NET 7 it is called Entity Framework 7. We accept everything, and there we are. Next thing again, again, now we already got it, the design package. So install this thing for our code first migrations, and the last one, SQL Server, not design, this one, Microsoft Entity Framework Core SQL Server. It is. Install this thing, and yes, we accept this. And only in the case you don't know what to do with SQL Server or how to get it, you can simply Google for SQL Server downloads and or Google for SQL Server Express, and then you get 2 SQL Server downloads, and then you get the free edition of SQL Server. So just click on this link, and then when your internet connection wants to, you get to their Express. You can download this, and after that you get the recommendation for SQL Server Management Studio, or if not, you can also just Google for this thing, and there it is, download SQL Server Management Studio. There's the link, and this is a great tool to, well, manage your SQL Server database. All right, so this is what you have to do, and then we can work with SQL Server and Entity Framework. Last thing here is we need the .NET EF tools. For that, just quick, my version of .NET is 7.0.2, the preview edition. Should still work with 7.0.102 it is, I think, by the time of recording this. And regarding the entity framework tools, what we then need is a .NET tool install, and then -- global, and then .NET -ef, and it's telling me that this thing is already installed. So what I can do is simply uninstall this, and then install it back again, and there it is, was successfully installed. And with .NET EF we can double check, there it is, Entity Framework Core .NET Command Line Tools 7.0.2. Awesome. So this is what we need. And now next step already is implementing the data context, because the data context or the database context will be the thing we will use to make a connection to our database. All right, so let's do that next. In the Solution Explorer, we create a new folder in the server project, call this data. All right, and in here now we add a new class, and this thing shall be called data context. This is simply a way I do this. It works. I think it's great. So please just continue with me here. Thank you very much. Now this thing first inherits from DB context, and this thing comes from Microsoft Entity Framework Core. You could do this first, and when you type control and period, then maybe you would get the suggestion to install the NuGet package Entity Framework Core. Totally up to you. You can do it this way or the other way. All right, with the data context, we first need our constructor. So CTOR it is, hit tab twice, and then in here we need options, and these shall be of type DB context options. With our data context class here, we call this options, and we also call the base constructor with our options. And now down here we need actually DB sets. Now what are DB sets? Well, let's have a quick look here. Prop and then DB set of type contact, and we call this now also contacts. And this thing now is a representation of the table in our database, right? So there will be a table representing the contact type, and we call this thing then contacts. Usually you just pluralize the entity name here. So contacts is, I think, a great name, and we actually need exactly the same thing for our nodes. And please bear with me if I am not diving that deep here. I've got lots of other tutorials on my channel, and of course got my online courses, .NET Web Academy, and so on. There we really dive deep, so maybe you want to have a look there. But for now, please, again, bear with me. I want to make this somehow as quick as possible, but I know that this tutorial is still very, very long. Anyways, we've got our DB sets, and now we also have to configure one more thing. We have to add a connection string, and what we could do is put the connection string in our app settings JSON file here and access this thing. It is pretty handy, in particular when you want to use more connection strings than just one. But for this tutorial now, let's just use our onConfiguring method. So override on, almost override onConfiguring, it is. Great, there it is already. And in here now we can call the options builder, use it, use SQL Server. This is the perfect method here. Maybe put this in a new line because this thing will be a bit longer. And now we say server is, in my case, period, backslash, and then SQL Express, the database. Let's call this thing Blazing CRM maybe. Then we set trusted connection to true, and now the new thing in Entity Framework 7, trust server certificate also true. All right, so trust server certificate is true. Trusted connection is true. Database is Blazing CRM, but this is totally up to you. And again, the server, if you have SQL Server Express installed on your local machine, then this should be the same for you, or in your case. All right, and now let's save this. And then let's also add one more thing. We already got mock data in our contacts page. I can't find anymore. There it is, right? And now let's just use this data to seed our database. So we've already got some contacts in our database, all right? Now to do that, we need our onModelCreating method. So down here, again, overrides, and then onModelCreating, that's the one. And here we say now model builder, all right? And then for the entity contact, we want to say this has some data, and let's data, and now let's give this also some data. So again, back to our contacts page, and in here now, new contacts, copy everything back to our data context, paste this, format everything, and now we've got some contacts. All right, so Peter Parker is ID 1, Tony Stark, and Bruce Wayne. And another thing we can add are actually some notes. So again, to save you a bit time, I think this is the last time I am pasting something in here. Again, model builder entity node this time has data. And here the node IDs are 1, 2, 3, and also the contact IDs 1, 2, 3. So every contact has at least one node. With great power comes great responsibility. I am Iron Man and I'm Batman. These are great nodes in my opinion. So let's format everything, save it again. And now the next step is to register this data context in our program CS. So let's do that real quick. This is the correct place. So here, builder services, and then add db context data context. It is, what was that? Okay. And here now we also add the reference. We've got our data context. And now finally we can run our migrations. So we simply open up the terminal, and in here now we write .NET EF. Let's have a look at the commands here. We've got database, DB context, and migrations, and we need the commands to manage migrations and then commands to manage the database. So again, .NET EF migrations, and then add initial for this very first migration. And if you do not pay attention like me, you get this message here: no project was found. Now what do we have to do is we go to our actual solution folder, and then, or the project folder, we move one step further to the server project folder, right? So here is now our server project. And now let's try this one more time. .NET EF migrations, add initial, and hopefully the build will succeed, and then we will get a migrations file. Nice. So now let's have a quick look. And here we see this migrations folder now, and you see what will happen when we run this. So we will create a table in the app method. You see this table contacts with the primary key, another table notes with the primary key, node ID, and also the foreign key, contact ID, right? This is nice. And then we will insert some data. And this is actually amazing, the bulk insert here, because this is also new with Entity Framework 7. Was not possible before. So this is great. And in the down method, so if you decide to roll back this migration, then we just drop the tables, contacts, and nodes. So now let's run this with .NET EF database update. Yes, update is the correct command here, it will also create the table. And these are all the commands it uses for that. So if you have time and you want to see, just have a look. And now here we now not restart, we refresh this thing and we've got tables. Isn't that nice? Notes and contacts. Don't worry about the EF migrations history. This is an internal one for Entity Framework. And here now we see our contacts columns, the notes, and let's see, edit top to 100 rows. And we see our beautiful contacts. And here we also see our beautiful notes. Isn't that nice? Now the next step is to get the data from the server. So let's add a ContactsController next, and then we will continue with the Blazor client and receive the contacts from the database. But this is now also a great point, I think, where we can add this to GitHub. So let's continue here. So in our server project, let's add a new folder and call this controllers. And in here we add a new controller. Right click, add controller. Not a new item, we add a controller. And in here it is not an MVC controller, it's an API controller. And I would like to use empty ones. No generated code whatsoever. Best way to learn and sometimes also to develop, right? And we call this ContactsController. All right, so this is now our controller. Beautiful thing. And this can be done real quick, actually. The first thing we need is a constructor. All right, and in here now, with the help of dependency injection, we inject the data context. And please, please, please bear with me here. I am using a fat controller here. Usually, and again, in the courses and tutorials, we will use the repository pattern with services. So I would create a contacts service or a contact service that we will inject here into the controller and then use the actual or implement the actual logic then in this repository or service. Got a video about repository patterns in general and explained it. What is this thing actually and how does dependency injection work there? So this is something we could do, but again, for the sake of time, let's just use let's just use fat controllers here. Not fake, these are real, but they are fat. All right, so now what we can do here is we want to actually create and assign this field, add an underscore here because this is a private read-only. All right, and I know I can configure this, but I didn't. So now the method. We need a method to get all the contacts, and for that we will use HTTP GET. IntelliCode, you are great. This is totally right. Now this is a public async task. We return an action result with a list of contacts like that. You need the reference here. Get all contacts it is. And now in here we just return await and then context, and then we just access our contacts table and turn this into a list. And since we actually got an isDeleted flag, we can also add something here. So with a where statement or with a where function, we can say we only want to get the contacts. Come on, see for a contact that are not deleted. All right, so give me the contacts that are not deleted and turn them into a list. So this is our controller. And now let's use this endpoint with the route API, then the controller name, this is the convention, controller in brackets, contacts. So API contacts, and we use the get HTTP request method. And with that, we should get all our new contacts from the database. Okay, and to do that, again, we go to the client now finally, and to our contacts page. And for that, we actually wanna make the call to the web API when we load this page, and this page is initialized. And for that, what we can do is we call a lifecycle method called onInitialized or onInitialized async. We've got a couple of lifecycle methods here in Blazor. So for the components, we've got onAfterRender, onInitialized, onParameterSet. They make sense in different cases or scenarios. For us, onInitialized async it shall be. And in here now, one more thing we need is, since we are making a call, an HTTP call to the web service, it is inject HTTP client. We need to, or have to inject the HTTP client, call this HTTP. All right, and now in here, we say var result is await, and then HTTP get from JSON async. All right, because we will get JSON here, and we cast this to a list of contacts. And again, the route is API contacts. And let's just leave it at that and simply remove our contacts here so that we really see the difference. So now the grid data is empty, nothing happening here, right? Let's run this, rebuilding, and no records to display. Great, this is absolutely correct. Let me remove the check mark here that it is not reloading on file save. And now we say if our result is not null, then we say our grid data is now the result. Save this. And now we have to restart manually. And yes, it does. And there's our data. Isn't that nice? And now in the developer tools network tab it is. We just reload. And here's our call. Isn't that nice? Okay, so this really works. We're already full stack now. We got the Blazor client, got a web API, and also a database where we stored our data, and now we're receiving the data here. Isn't that great? So this works just fine. Love that. And now the next step is finally that this address here is available actually, so that it will find something. So we will add now the page for a single contact, the edit contact page, where we will be able to create a new contact and update an existing one. All right, for that, we go to our pages folder and add another Razor component, and we call this now simply edit contact, because this is actually what we want to do there. And we need some stuff. Well, first, this is a page. So let's add 2 page directives actually, because we want to use this again to edit a contact and create a new one. So this shall be called contacts and then edit, and then for that we need an ID as a parameter. So like that, and it's an integer. So the next one is when we want to create a new contact, we open this route. All right. What we also need is the HTTP client and the navigation manager, because we want to do some stuff with that. Well, of course, we want to store the changes, save the changes. So for that, we need the HTTP client and navigation manager to get back to the list of all contacts when we made a change, for instance. So inject HTTP client HTTP and inject navigation manager. All right, and now we need the ID parameter. So parameter it is, and in here public int could be null, because you know, new contact. And yeah, this is a property, so I could have used the built-in snippet, but sometimes we forget it, right? Okay. And now regarding the title here, depending on the given ID, we change this title or header of this page. So if now the ID is not null, then we could actually do the following. We say that we wanna edit. We could actually add the name of the contact, right? So we need another property here, which is the contact. So let's add this thing first. This is again a property, contact, and let's say this is a new contact first. And now we can say edit contact name, all right, or nickname maybe. And in the other case, we just say create a new contact, right? Something like that. Now, again, the idea behind that is that with a given ID, we want to edit a contact. And if the ID is null, we know that the user wants to create a new contact. All right, and now to be able to do all that, we need an edit form in this edit contact page. And now finally we get to use more Syncfusion components like the text box, for instance, the date picker. They look really great. So let's continue now with the edit form. For that, the first thing I want to do is a diff. I know this is really exciting. And then we need an edit form, and let me just add this reference here to the imports razor. Maybe you're a bit confused. Why do we have to do this? Usually you don't, right? Well, this is an empty Blazor solution. We use the empty template here, and not every reference is then here in our imports razor file, but now it is here. All right, so now we've got our edit form already, and we need a model here. And this shall be our contact. And what we can also do is add a method for our submit, and I want to use onValidSubmit. So not only submit, I really want to check if this form is valid, because we can of course do that as well with Syncfusion. And onValidSubmit we call handle submit, and let me just add an empty method here real quick. Async task handle submit. All right, so now we've got our method here, and now let's continue first with the actual input or text box components here. For that we need another reference. In the imports we add Syncfusion Blazor and then inputs, and here now the first one is Syncfusion text box. Again, we can use a CSS class. In my case, I would like to use eOutline. Looks a bit different. Then we can use a placeholder. This is really great, but you will see why in a second. And then for this placeholder, we can also define a float label type. What I like is the float label type auto. And now the next thing is the typical binding of a value. Oh my gosh, it's late again. And here we say contact first name, for instance. All right, so this is now our SF text box, and I would say we just have a look real quick how this looks. Let's see. So it is building, and there it is. Edit. Yeah, we do not get the contact, right? This is really sad, but what we can also do is we can go to contact new, for instance, and create a new contact, right? And here's the first name. And what I can do now, I go here, see that? First name. this is a great solution really to a problem I had a couple of times, where you would, well, in specific cases, maybe you wanted to add a label, and for that you would have to write an extra component or use another element, another HTML element just for the label. And here in this case, you don't really have to do this. And this is also the auto float label mode, was it? Type. All right, the type. So this means that, come on, where is it? There, that when we have entered something here, it just stays above the text box, and when it's empty, then it moves down as the default placeholder. For instance, when we add or put this to, set this to always, then we will see that this is always on top, right? And the other option was, come on, never. Yeah, and in this case, we would have to again add a label manually. As you can see now, type something in here, and now I don't know what field this is, right? So that's why auto is a really, really great option here. So let's just save this again, and let's just add the other text boxes, I would say. So let's just copy this, and here almost forgot one thing. So we want to use the last name, the nickname, then also the place, and maybe date of birth, but this is a date picker, so this will look a bit differently. So now first name, the last name for the last name, we've got the nickname for the nickname, and also the place for the place. And let me have a look now. Let's see. Create a new contact. Yep, there are our fields. This is nice. And now the date picker. So for that, SF date picker, we need the calendars reference. Seen that? Calendars. So let's add this here real quick. And this is, by the way, also a great way to find the actual reference you need. So calendars, and now the date picker, not date time if you don't want to use the time, but you have the option here, right? So see that you can also add a date time picker to also see a time. And what I want to use here is just the date picker. All right. And now, of course, some more parameters here. First we want to set is the t value, which is a nullable date time for the date of birth. Again, we've got a placeholder, which is date of birth. And then again, actually the float label type. I'm lazy, so let me just copy paste this here. And bind value for our date of birth. And one more thing, format. So let me add the format here as a string. For instance, this format this time. Save that. And then the last thing actually is a button. So the submit button, right? SF button it is. And here again, CSS class, this time E primary. For the icon, we set E icons and E save. The text will be save. And then, very important, the type is submit. All right, save that. Build this thing, and there we are. This is now our form, and we also see the date picker here. Isn't that nice? And I think when I make this a bit smaller, I think you can still able to see everything, right? Then You see how this would actually look. All right, you can set this to any date we want, of course. Today, perfect. And we can zoom out here to the months, years, and whatever you need. And the save button. Isn't that great? And when we enter something here, it's also, the labels also work. Great. One thing I don't really like is how big this text box is, but we can change that real quick with CSS. So maybe also make use of CSS isolation real quick. In here in the pages folder, we add a new item. And this is a style sheet. And we have to call this now edit contact razor CSS. So this is the CSS file only for our edit contact razor. And let me just add one tiny thing here. For the div, we set the width to 500 pixels, for instance. And to make this work, actually, we have to add one more change, since this is the empty template. In here, in the index HTML, just a side note really, we have to add another link here with the href, actually Blazor Syncfusion CRM, so your project name, and then client, and then styles CSS. All right, and with that, then the CSS isolation should hopefully work. Rebuilding. Yeah, now it's, in my opinion, looks better. Okay, so we've got our edit form. Can't do much yet. There it is. We of course have to implement the handle submit, but let's first test one more thing. I already told you I want to check if this form is actually valid. So what we can do is we can actually test the validation, right? To do that, let's say we wanna make the nickname required. So what we can do is simply up here, we add another attribute and make this required. And as you can see, now we need the reference for system component model data annotations. Save that. And now back to the edit contact razor, we have to add, this is standard Blazor stuff, we have to add the data annotations validator. That would be one thing. And now we could display a summary of all the validation messages, or we just display the one single message here for the nickname. So we add validation message for, and then in a lambda expression again, the contacts nickname, like that. Okay, close this. This should be it. Let's restart the app. And now let's see. Enter something here, here, not here. Save this. The nickname field is required. It's a bit big actually, so maybe we can change that as well. So real quick, in our app CSS this time, we change the type for, oh, not here. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, validation message is the class we have to change. So maybe we can do that real quick. Close this. And in here now, we just say validation message, font size is 12 pixels, important, and font family system UI, maybe. All right, save this again, rebuild. Okay, nothing changed here. Yeah, now it works. All right. So this looks better now. We can enter our stuff here, 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 and here. Save this thing. Of course, nothing is happening here. So now the next steps actually are, for one, implementing handle submits, but maybe one thing we should do before is actually loading the contact we want to edit, right? So if it's not contacts new, if it's actually, when we go to contacts and then we say we change Tony, or we want to change Tony, then we here actually get this contact from the database, and then we're able to change it, change the information here, and then with that button we call our handle submits method. And I would say let's do exactly that next. All right, so first, to get a single contact, we have to go back to our ContactsController, because here we only have the method get all contacts, but now, well, you guessed it, we need a method to get one single specific contact. So let me just copy this method here. And regarding the route, now we need a parameter, and this is simply the ID. Just in case you don't know it, here we can add the route attribute similar to this thing here on top of the class, and then here in parentheses we can enter a route, like in curly braces, then the ID. But what you can also do is we can combine these two attributes, put this here, and it's, when we add the bracket here, the closing bracket, then it's exactly the same in essence. And now regarding the method here, let's call this get contact by ID. And now here we need, of course, also the parameters. So this thing and this thing, these two have to match. Return type is now only one single contact. And now in here, what we want to do is first, let's just check if this contact is really available. So contacts, and then find async ID, that's the one. And now here, let's check first if result is null. And then in this case, we simply return not found, a not found status code with a little message like contact not found. And otherwise, we simply return our contact. Again, with DTOs, we can do this a bit better, maybe a customized service response that can deliver some more information about what is actually going on. But for this tutorial, I think this is totally sufficient. So we've got our controller method, but now we want to call this thing. So let's go back to our edit contact, and in here now again we use the onInitialized async, a lifecycle method, to get the contact. So override and then onInitialized async. And now the first thing we have to check is if the ID is not null, because this means that, well, we get an ID, and this means that we want to get the information of the contact with that given ID. So if ID is not null, then we say var result is await HTTP, and then first get async. Now this time not get from a JSON async, because it could be the case that we get a not found, right? Just did that in the controller. And in this case, we want to do something else. So first we check here get async with the proper URL or the proper route. So API contacts for the controller, and now only the ID, like that. And now here we can check if the result status code is the success status code. So this would be then the status code 200, or as you can see here, true if the HTTP response message status code was in the range of 200 to 299. Otherwise it is false, and when we return a not found, it is a 404. I think everyone knows this one, even people who don't write code by now. All right, so if this is the case, then we say our JSON result is wait, and then result, and then content. So this is our HTTP content we get, and now we use JSON again. So read from a JSON async. We want to get a contact here. So that's the one. And now again, we check if, but too many ifs here. If JSON result is not null, and only then we say contact is the JSON result. And I am a bad coder here, because an evil coder, because I'm not using the curly braces here. But for now, or for this little thing, I don't really care. Sorry about that. And if otherwise the success code is the status code is not 200 success, for instance, then what we can do is, well, let's make this simple. We just navigate the user to the page that the user would use to create a new contact. So in here now, this would simply be a navigation manager. Do we have it injected? Yeah, we have the navigation manager. And then we say navigate to, and then simply contacts, and then new. And this shall be it, I hope. Let's test that. There we are. We go to contacts, and for instance, edit Peter Parker, and there we are. This is Spider-Man. Again, let's have a look in the developer console as well. For instance, now Bruce Wayne, we see ID 3. This is the result. And you can see here the status code is 200. What about ID 4? Don't know why you would do that, but maybe you want to do that. See it here, we get a 404 not found, and then we just jump to the create a new contact form. Great. All right, and now let's implement creating and updating a contact in the edit contact page. And first, now again, the ContactsController. So back to Visual Studio. And in here, we go to our ContactsController again. We need new methods. This time it is a post and a put method. So maybe we can just copy this thing here first. And now this is an HTTP post. And in here, we again, let's just return one contact here, the one we created. So create contact is now the name, and as a parameter, we choose the contact model. Again, I know I'm repeating myself. We can do this better with DDOs, request and response DDOs, but this works here for this little tutorial. And the first thing here now is rather simple. Again, we access our contacts and then the contacts table. And in here we just say add contacts. But since we made a change to this table, now we have to save these changes with await, and then context save changes async, and then again we just return this contact. This is already our post method to create a contact, but let's also add our update method since we're already at it here. And now HTTP put it is, we say this is update contact now, and here let's add the ID and also the contact. We could do this a bit differently. For instance, we could just say without the ID, we just wanna use the contact here as a parameter and grab the ID from there. Again, this is totally up to you. And if you want to use a DTO, for instance, maybe you would not put the ID here in a update contact request DTO or something like that. So I think this is totally fine. Now, what we want to do here is, again, we want to first find a contact. Maybe let's call this a DB contact for database context, contact and context. Not that easy. And in here now, again, we return a 404 not found is if the contact is null, but if it isn't, we actually found a contact, then we just manually override our properties here. So DB contact first name is now the contact first name. And let me just copy, or maybe IntelliCode is, yeah, IntelliCode is pretty awesome. So the last name, then also the nickname is contact nickname, right? Then we've got the date of birth, maybe. Date of birth is contact date of birth. And the place, let's also update the place. This thing is now contact place. And date updated. This is something we have to also set now. So date updated is now actually datetime now. All right. And after that, again, we have to save these changes. So await and then context save changes async. That's it. And after that, we return OK and our contacts. This should be it. First name, last name, nickname, date of birth, place, and date updated. I can already tell you in the delete method, then we will do also an update and update the deleted flag. But this, again, should be it for now. And again, I would say we just test this thing. So let's restart the app. There we are. And now let's go to contacts and then Peter Parker. And now let's say this is amazing Spider-Man. Save this, already saved here. And we do not really see a result, right? Why is that? Well, we forgot the handle submit method, of course. So let's do that now. And now if you reload, of course, it is still Spider-Man. All right, so we got the server and now here handle submit. For now, pretty empty, but let's just do the following. We want to use the put or the post depending on the current state here. So again, we check if the ID is null or not. And then we want to get the actual result where we again check if the status code is a 200. So the status code is a success status code. So let's define our HTTP response message first. And this is our result. And now if again ID is not null, then in this case we choose an update. So result now is await HTTP and then put as JSON async. And in here now we say API contacts, and here for the route it is contact ID, so the ID of the current contact, and our object we want to send now, our request object is the actual contact. And if the ID is null, this means we want to create a new contact. Then we say await HTTP post, because this is our HTTP method now, post as JSON async, and the route is simply API contacts without any other parameter, and we use our contact here. All right, with that we get the result, and again we check if result is success status code. Then we do the following. Let me get some space here. We try to parse this thing. So JSON result is await result content, and then here almost read from JSON async. We want to get a contact here, and if JSON result is not null, then we say our contact is the new JSON result, and that's it. All right, and now let's save this again, restart, and now let's see. Let me also open the console here, network tab again. So we see our data grid here with all the contacts. This is nice. We go to Peter Parker. We get Peter Parker with the nickname Spider-Man. And now, again, It's amazing Spider-Man. We save, we make a call, and you see it here. It is a put call with 200. And now the preview, what do we get back? Amazing Spider-Man. We can reload this and we should get amazing Spider-Man. And also here we see amazing Spider-Man. Isn't that great? And now let's also test the creation of a new contact. But before we do that, let's just add a new button here, because currently we would have to actually, enter the URL manually in the address bar. So we can fix this with this button, maybe also add a button down here. So let's go first to our contacts page. So they'll be here. And let's first create a new method, create contact without a parameter. And here we just navigate to contacts and then new. All right. And the button, then maybe we can add in here in a paragraph. So we get some space between the grid and the button. And this shall be, again, a Syncfusion button. This is a primary button. The content here is create new contact. And on click, we open our create contact. We call our create contact method. I think this works. And now also the navigation bar. So real quick, in the nav bar, we already have our Syncfusion button here. And now let me just put this in a new line. And here now we also add the on click parameter, and we say we just copy this stuff and then move to contacts and then new. All right, now let's test this. Restart the app. There we are. We see our create new contact button. This works. We go back and click here now. This works as well. And now this contact, well, let's add another Bruce. Last name is Banner. Nickname is Hulk. And according to Google, I found that Dayton, Ohio is his place. And the date of birth is, let's use the date picker here. Let's choose another year. And this should actually be 1973. It is May and then 8th. All right, let's save this. And this now should actually work as well. There it is. And now let's go to our contacts here and we get Bruce Banner from the database. Now you see, we did not really get feedback, right? The user doesn't usually the user doesn't open the developer tools to see a result here. So maybe we can add something like a success message or an error message. Let's do that real quick in our contacts form here. We go back to Visual Studio for that. And the thing is that what Syncfusion offers here is so-called messages and also toasts. But let me open this up real quick. So for instance, here in the demos, let's just scroll further down. It is here, notifications. We've got a message, right? So these are the messages that I want to use here in this concrete example. And when we have a look at the source code, how do they work? Well, you just add the components and then choose to display them or not simply with a Boolean flag, all right? So should they be visible or not? We will see this in a minute. What I also actually like from the look and feel are these toast messages. They look really nice. Of course, you can change the look as well, but the problem here is that you also have to put them as components on your page. And what they did here is with this button, for instance, they call a method show on click and hide on click. So Here we have to get the toast object, call the show async method. But again, this thing has to be placed on this page. I before used the Blazor to toast notifications from Christianity, so kudos to him. And what I love about these things is that you can actually register a service, and then you only have to call a method, or you inject the service first and then call this method for the toast or to display the toast. So I think a much better implementation for the default behavior of such toast notifications. But, and this is a big but, there is a tutorial out there. That's the one, show or hide toast from any page using service in Blazor. So this is actually from Syncfusion, and there you can build pretty much exactly the same thing, right? So they used some toast options here. You can of course customize that. Here it's the title and the content, but you can also add the position, look and feel, whatever you like. And then this toast service, and when you use this toast service, you can inject this thing then. And when you then call from whatever place you like in your application, then you can call this show toast, use the show toast method with the options, and then do exactly the same thing. Here you can see you have to register this thing, and this is again pretty similar to the Blazor toast from Christianity. So great stuff. And this is actually the fix already here for the little issue I had with toast notifications. Anyways, what I want to use here in this example are the messages, because I think they look nice, and we can simply use them for our little example here to create or update a contact. So how would you do that? Well, we go to our edit contact razor page, and then after the edit form, let's just add another paragraph like that. And here now we use the SfMessage, Syncfusion Message. As you can see, we need another import, so this shall be done here in the imports using Syncfusion Blazor notifications. And now here we've got our SfMessage component. Now let's say severity here is message severity success. This thing will be visible, controlled by a variable called show success message. We will add this thing in a second. And actually we need a message here, and close this object here. And here we say contact saved successfully. And then just for the error case, we say this would be then error, and show error message. And here we just say, oops, something went wrong, for instance. Okay, and now the variables, let's just put them down here. So bool show error message is first false, and the same thing down here. Well, let's start with the success message. All right, and now in our handle submit here we can say show success message is true, and here if we do not get a success status code, we say show error message is true. All right, so again, put the components here and just control it, the visibility, by we display them by changing the value of these Boolean flags in essence. So let's restart the app again. There we are, contacts. And now let's just say we saved this guy, contact saved successfully. Isn't that great? Now, of course, we have to reload this page to, well, remove this message. I'm pretty sure there are different ways to do this. And now, just to test the error case real quick, let's just, here on the update, for instance, return a bad request. Save that and restart. And here now, when we save this, oops, something went wrong. Awesome. Let's undo this, restart. And there we are, save this, contact saved successfully. Beautiful. All right, so we're almost done with all the CRUD operations. The last thing that is missing is delete a contact. Again, I told you I just want to do a soft delete in essence here. So first, let's implement the controller method again. And that would be, yeah, we are already here. So this is now HTTP delete. Let me just copy this thing because again, we need the ID here as parameter. HTTP request method is now delete. Let's return a list of contacts, maybe of the rest of the contacts. And here we call this delete contact only with the ID now. Again, we try to find this contact. If it isn't there, then we return a contact not found message with a 404 not found status code. And the only, or there are two things actually we want to update here, is deleted is now true, and date deleted will be set to almost to a date time. Now we save this thing and we return now await get all contacts actually, and here then we get all the contacts that are not deleted. All right, this should be it. And now to the contacts page, because there I want to add a new button to delete our contacts. So again, there are of course different ways to do this. We could add a button here in the edit contact page. Maybe this makes more sense for you, but for this example, I again want to use the grid because I really like the data grid. So let's go to the contacts razor, and in here now, let's just add another button again to enable us to delete a contact. And maybe one more thing I can already tell you, maybe we should add a confirmation dialog, right? But let's do this step by step. So first, we just copy and paste this thing here to get the delete button. So now we can actually use a delete icon, and of course we also need a delete contact method. And now the thing is, it of course would already work with only the ID, but since I want to add a dialog here, I want to have the information of the complete contact in the dialog. And for that, since I don't want to make another call, let's just put the complete contact here. And you will see why we need this in a minute. And now we need the delete contact method, of course. So down here, first void delete contact with the contact object. And now the errors here are gone. And now let's continue with a dialog. So the first thing we need here is another reference in our imports razor. And this thing now is for our pop-ups. So there are a couple of pop-ups and I want to show you the dialog. So back to the markup of the contacts page. There we are. And now let's add this dialog below the button. Thing is, to display this dialog, it works similar to the Syncfusion message we saw a couple of minutes ago, right? So we add the component here. It is not visible at the beginning, but when we want to display it, then we change the visibility by the help of, or with the help of a Boolean flag. So let's first start with the Syncfusion dialog. That's the thing here. We can set a width, for instance, this width here, and we can set this thing to modal. So this would then be a modal dialog. And here now to change the visibility or to show it and hide it. Again, we need a variable, and here let's just call this show delete dialog. All right, let me add this real quick. So for instance, down here we say bool show delete dialog. Of course it is false first. And now with the dialog we have a couple of options to design them. First, we use the dialog templates component, and in here we have a header, and here it's a title. So we can say something like, are you sure? Not your, are you sure? All right. And then we also need a content. So down here, again in a paragraph, maybe we can say, do you really want to delete? And now comes the catch. I wanna get the nickname of that contact. So how would I do that? I don't know. Just by using a button, I don't know the current contact that, or the button that was clicked. So this is why I wanted to set this contact here, or give this contact here to the delete contact method, because now what we can do is we can add a contact to delete, right? So maybe up here we can say contact, and this thing can be now contact to delete. And now when this is set, we will do that in the delete contact method in a sec. Then we say, now here, contact to delete. And now to get rid of the warning, we just want to display the nickname. All right, so I hope you get the idea here. We click this button and the button knows who the contact is, but then the dialog doesn't. So what we can do is we can set, let's say, a temporary variable here, and then the delete contact method sets this variable and also shows the dialog, and then the dialog knows, okay, this is the contact that should be deleted. And to do that, really, we can say here in the delete method, contact to delete is now the contact, and also we want to show the delete dialog. A bit complicated maybe at the beginning, but in other component libraries it works similarly. All right, so we've got this, but now we have to give the user some options to decide if he or she wants to delete the user or not. So what we can do now is we add dialog buttons, and the first dialog button looks like that. Content, almost not the context. The content is, for instance, yep, I want to delete this superhero in essence. This thing is not set to primary because, you know, maybe you automatically press the primary button, and I don't want you to do that really. When you hit delete, on click we call a function, and this function we will call this confirm delete contact, for instance, and then another one to cancel this. Here we just say nope, this thing is now primary, and here we say the function is called cancel delete contact. Then we close the dialog buttons. And one more thing I would like to add, well, for your information, we can also work with events. So here there are dialog events we can use, but I want to use animations, and here we can add a little effect. This is nice. Not really important, of course, but we can say dialog effect, a little zoom effect, for instance. Close this, and then we get a little animation. Isn't that nice? So now the rest of the functions: confirm delete contact and cancel delete contact. Well, cancel is pretty straightforward. What we want to do here is we just say void cancel delete contact. With that, we say show delete dialog is now false. But now when you want to confirm, we make our web API call. So this shall be an async method task confirm delete contact. And now here, first we check if we actually got a contact to delete, right? So if contact to delete is null, in this case, we simply return. But if not, we close the dialog. So show delete dialog is false. And then you already know this by now, I guess. Wait, HTTP delete async. The URL is again API contacts and then our contact to delete ID. And now here, if result is success status code, then we say bar JSON result is await result content, and then read from a JSON async. This shall be a list of contacts. And in here now we say if our JSON result is not null, then set our grid data to the JSON result. All right, that was the right shortcut to save everything. Okay, let's test that real quick. We restart our application. And there we are. So we've got 4 contacts. Let's just say we want to delete Bruce. Although it's so nice that the filter now works for both of them. Isn't that great? Clear this. Bruce. I love this. Okay, so we delete this guy. Not edit. Delete this guy. Here's our, did you see the effect? Zoom. Bam. Are you sure? Do you really want to delete Hulk? Nope. Or, yep. And he's gone. Isn't that nice? So this works. Let's just double check in the database. I closed the table, so let me just open it again. And here we see some values. Bruce Banner, Hulk is deleted, is true. And we also get a date deleted and a date updated only for Peter Parker. All right. Great. So we are actually done with our contacts. And now the next thing I want to implement are some nodes. Already told you about this idea here. Okay, so there's no page. So these shall be then all the nodes. And in here now, for instance, if we edit Spider-Man, then I want to display the nodes down here, and I want to also add a text box, multi-line text box, to be able to add some nodes. So yeah, let's do that next. So the first thing we need is another controller for the server side. So let's just add one, not here in the controllers folder. Right click. Then controller, and again an empty API controller. We call this now nodes controller, and there it is. And again, I know we're using a fat controller here, and usually I would create a service with an interface using the repository pattern and dependency injection, but this would again make the tutorial even longer. And I already have a bunch of tutorials covering that on my channel, so I hope you still keep watching. Now, let's just implement the complete controller. And since I'm lazy, let's forget the update. We just create, read, and delete nodes. So again, the first thing we need is a constructor. That's what I was looking for. And again, our data context. Assign this, create and assign this field here. And now down here, we need a get method for all nodes, a get method for all the nodes of a certain contact, then create nodes and delete them. And again, let's just implement all of them. So we got this covered already. So HTTP get for getting all nodes, public async, task action result list of node, Yes, this is the reference we need. And we call this get all nodes. This is pretty small, this function here. We return await, and then context nodes. And in here now, what I want to do actually is include the contact. So we have the contact ID, and with that we can add a button then on the client to navigate the user to the actual contact. So, and for node, and here I want to get the contacts. This is what I want to include. And then let's order this descending by the date created, so we get the latest nodes on top. Order by descending, and then and date created. And here we turn this into a list. Is this the right format? I'm not sure about that. Don't think so. Yep. Okay, this looks better now. All right, so this is get all nodes, and now let me just copy this, paste this now for the nodes of a certain contact. So here we add a parameter contact ID. We return again list of nodes, but this time get nodes from contact maybe, and we add the contact ID here. And there's only one thing we can change. We just use the where function, and here we say where the contact ID equals the contact ID. All right, could be an empty list, but this is totally fine. Now the post methods, let me just copy this again. And now it is post to create a node. So create node with a node here. And then we say, what do we say? We say first context nodes add node. All right. Then of course we save this and we return the nodes maybe again from the contact. So let's say like that. All right. And here we have to add the node, of course, like that. Okay. And yeah, maybe also order by descending. I mean, why not? We can leave this as that, like that, I guess, because the idea behind that is that we, for now, or for the idea I've got for this application here in this tutorial, that we only create nodes actually in edit contact page. Yeah, I think for now this makes sense. So now the last thing, delete. Copy this again. Here we say delete, but this is not just the ID of a node. Call this now delete node with the ID. And here now, similar to the contacts delete contacts method, we first get a node, so await context nodes find async ID. If the DB node is null, then we return not found, node not found. All right. And then we say this time nodes remove the DB node and await context save changes async. And again, we return, let's say, only the ones of this character here, character contact. And this should be then the DB node contact ID. All right, and with that, off to the edit contacts page first. So in here now, we need the nodes. Let's start with the code block this time. We need new properties and methods to create a node and load all nodes of the current contact. So first, maybe here, we say we've got a list of nodes, like that. And here, this is now by default a new list of nodes. And to create a node, we say new node. And by default, this is a new node with the text just set to string empty. Okay. All right, and now the methods. Let's just say async task create a node. And now if you say ID is null, then again we return because we haven't stored this contact yet. And otherwise, we say the contact ID of the new node is the current ID, and then we say wait HTTP post as JSON async, and then API nodes new node, for instance. And again, if result is success status code, then let's just load all nodes, and this is the next method here. So async task, almost async task load nodes, and in here we say var result is await HTTP get from a JSON async a list of nodes, and the URL here is now API nodes, and then the current contact ID. And again, if the result is not null, then we set our nodes to the result. And now deleting is async task delete nodes with the ID, or let's call this node ID. And here now we say, let's copy this. We say delete, almost delete from JSON async. We get a list of nodes back, and here we add the ID, the node ID, and if result is not null, we say that our nodes are now the result. All right, I hope we've got everything covered, and now off to the markup actually. And I would like to use Syncfusion cards this time for the nodes. So let's add this reference real quick. In our imports again, we now add the cards like that. So back to the edit contact razor page. And here now, the first thing I want to add is a text box and a button to add a node. And after that, a button and the cards to display all nodes of this contact. So here first, if ID is not null, then we say, I just wanted to add a little header here. So nodes, and then first the text box. Text box, that's the one. And this thing now again gets a class eOutline. Placeholder is a new note, and this is new now. We set this to a multi-line, so with that we get a text area actually. This is set to true, and again we can set the float label type to float label type auto, and the value here now is our new node text. All right, and now regarding the button, we say SfButton, and here CSS class e inherit, and the content is add node, and on click we create a node. All right, and after that, for the list of nodes, let's get a little divider here. In a paragraph, we add a new button, or maybe we could just copy and paste this. Now it's time for copy paste errors. SfButton, maybe we can change this and say this is a primary button, set to true. Content this time is load all nodes, load nodes, and when we have all the nodes, then in a for each, let's use the cards to display them. So for each node in nodes, we can add a Syncfusion card like that. And these are pretty simple. We get a card header, an image. You can also use images, but I actually wanted to use the header here. And this thing gets a title, add node, date created to string, rather simple. And now here for the content, we have card content, and here this is again context. Content is node text, like that, and then also a new line for the next node. So let's save everything and have a look. And there we are. We see our nodes here. The new node, we can add a node, and we can load all the nodes. And this is actually true here. With great power comes great responsibility. And now for a second node, maybe something like, I believe there's a hero in all of us. Of course, I looked that up. So add this node, and there we are. This is now our next node. Isn't that great? And now there's only one thing missing actually on this page. We want to load all, not load, we want to delete a node. So let's go back to the client, and we already have a card header and a content. So now what we can also add is a footer for the delete button, for instance. So card footer it is, and here now card footer content, and again this is simply a button. So SfButton, and here now let's say we set the content to delete is primary. Well, why not? Let's set this to true, and on click we now call our delete method down here, delete node with the node ID. So this would be then in a lambda expression delete node, and then our node ID. All right, let's test that real quick. Restart application. There's our edit form. We load all our nodes. We've got a delete button and it is gone. And now in the database again, and we'll have a look here. Again, no note. Let's just add another test node here. There it is. And when we have a look now, we see this is now ID 5. So this is really the ID for the node after the node we just deleted. When we delete this thing again, execute SQL, it is also gone. Great. So now this works. And now let's implement our nodes page real quick. So for that, we add a new page here in the client. Call this now nodes. And there we are. Awesome. And since this is a page, we add our directive here. /nodes. We need the HTTP client again. HTTP client, HTTP, and also the navigation manager, because I want to navigate the user to the contact of a node. Again, let's start with the code block. So here now we have a list of nodes. We call this now a node list, and this is a new list of nodes. And first let's get all the nodes. So on initialized async here, we wanna call the get all nodes method. So var result is await HTTP get from JSON async list node. URL is API nodes, and if the result is not null, then we say the node list is our result. And now I only want to navigate to the contact. So let's add this method real quick with the contact ID. And here now let's say navigation manager, navigate to, and then contacts edit. And in here now, this shall be the edit, not the edit, the contact ID, like that. And now real quick, the markup. It's another for each actually, pretty similar to the edit contact page. Our node in our node list. And here again, we add the SF card, then the card header with the title. This time it is also node date created toString. All right, we've got the content, which is again and again, it is the context. Interesting. And node text. And again, a card footer with the card footer content. And now we check if we have a contact. So the contact is not null. And only in this case, we add a button where we say our content this time is, well, we want to show the nickname, so we have to add this, and then in here we say $show, and then node contact nickname. This is primary. And on click, we navigate to this user contact. So again, lambda expression here. and we navigate to contact with the node contact ID, and the parenthesis was missing. All right, format everything, save this, and now I'm really curious if this works. So we're here, it is building. Let's go to the nodes. They are loading, great. And here we see this is a node of Batman, or for Batman, Iron Man, and Amazing Spider-Man. So here we get to Batman, can load all the nodes of Batman again, Iron Man, and Spider-Man. All right, and these are all the nodes features, the node feature, all the node CRUD operations, you know what I mean. And now the last big feature I want to show you is the map. So let's do that next. All right, now to get started with the map feature, we have to prepare some stuff. So first, we change our contact model actually. We need a latitude and a longitude value to make this map feature happen. And then we also need a Google Location Services API key, a geocoding API key actually, but let's do this one step after another. Of course, you can use other services here. I used the Google one because this thing is free, so you can also use this. But again, let's do this step by step. So first, the model. We have, for instance, here the date of birth. And now let's add a double value nullable for the latitude. And then another one, double nullable double for the longitude. That's correct, I hope. Yep, that's the one, and with that we can now run a migration. Let me just stop the app first, and now make sure you're in the right directory. I restarted Visual Studio when you weren't watching, so let me just go to the server directory, and now .NET EF migrations. Let's call this lat long, this migration. Build succeeded. Yep, maybe loss of data. This is okay for this state of the application. And as you can see here, we add these columns here, latitude and longitude. And then again, we update the data, or not again, we update data. We do not insert data, we update data here. So let's just run this with a .NET EF database updates. All right, let's have a look in the database. We close the tables, refresh, and now we should see new columns, latitude and longitude. And here now we also see there are the columns, the values are null. This is okay. Now the next step is to use the Google Location Services NuGet package. We add this package here on the server for the server project. So right click, manage NuGet packages. And this is actually not officially by Google, I think. When we have a look, Google Maps location, and there it is, Seth Webster, almost 1 million downloads. So kudos to this guy. This is a really great, simple library, but everything you need for your .NET Web API, for instance. So please install this thing, and then you can use this, but you still need an API key. And to get the API key, well, there are different ways to do that. For instance, we can Google for Google Maps API key, and here is an interesting page already. Use API keys. So maybe you have to look this up first. In my case, I already got an API key, of course, so I can go already to the credentials page. And in here now, you can already see this this new project for Blazor Syncfusion CRM tutorial. You can go to create credentials. Maybe you have to choose geocoding API first. Not sure about that. I think you don't. But again, create credentials, API key, and then this thing is creating an API key. It takes a while, interestingly, but here it is. And I can trust you guys, right? So you won't use this, right? Because then I'm not able to use it for my project. But anyways, this is what you have to do. This is the key we need, or we can also just delete this thing and use the one I have already created. So we can go to show key, and there is this thing. All right. So this is what you have to do. Make sure you have your API key, and then you can come back to the implementations. All right. So now what I want to do is we change the ContactsController. And the idea is now that we get the longitude and latitude values from Google whenever we create or update a contact. Then we store the values in the database, and doing it that way, we have way fewer requests than using the Google API every time we open up the map, for instance, right? So again, only when we store data in the database, in essence, we make a call to the Google services, and not every time we open up the map. All right, so ContactsController it is. First, we need a method to get the values for the latitude and longitude. So let's just add a method here. The return value will be, or the type will be a map point from exactly this thing, a Google Maps location. Services, we call this method get lat long maybe. And here we provide a contact. And now what we want to do, first we need an instance of the Google location service. So new Google location service. Now we need our API key. So let me just grab it again. Copy this, close, paste it here. And then our values are get lat long from address, and here we just use our place. All right, so you can add everything here in essence, or anything, the streets, the postal codes, country, whatever it is. In our case, let's just use the place here, and when we did this, we just return the latitude and longitude value. Maybe we can rename it like that. All right, so this is how to get our latitude and longitude values. And now I want to write another method to set these values then. All right, so for the contact, so set lat long with a contact, and here now I say lat long is get lat long again with our contact. And then in here, yep, if this is not null, we say contact latitude is exactly that and exactly that. All right, this works just fine. IntelliCode, I love you. More and more. All right, and now we have to use these methods in our update and create methods. So the first thing we do here is set lat long, and also in the update set lat long for our DB contact, and this should be it. Let's save this. And now let's just test this real quick. So we just update the contacts we already have, and then let's see what will happen here with the values in our database. So where's our application? There it is. Go to contacts. Let's go to Peter maybe and save this guy. Contact saved successfully, and here we refresh and we get the values. Isn't that great? So this then would be New York City. What about Malibu? Save this. All right. Refresh. That's nice. Now Gotham City. I don't think this will work. So let's save this. Okay, the contact was saved, but yeah, no values here. So Google did not find anything. And now let's have a look here for Hulk again. And there he is. And let's just save this guy and execute. We see values. Isn't that great? And I think this is totally enough for our map. So now what we need is actually to add another method to only get contacts with values for the latitude and longitude. Otherwise the map will not be happy. It will crash. So we really have to pay attention here. So now let's just add another endpoint here. It is a get again, HTTP, or let me just copy this. Wait, here's our get. And let's put this here. But now we add the route or change the route a little bit. Let's just call this map. And in here we call this get map contacts. All right. And here now we want to get all the contacts that are not deleted and where the latitude is not null, and also longitude is not null. And that's already it. All right, so we're going to use this function in our client. So now it's time for the client implementations. In our imports, we now add maps. All right. And now we add a map page. So here we add the Razor component, call this map. Again, this is a page, so we call this map and we inject our HTTP client, call this HTTP. That's nice. And now we can start with the Syncfusion map, or let's cover the code block first, so that we're done with that actually. So here now first the list of contacts. This is a new list of contacts already, and the only thing we need really is the call to get all our contacts. So again, we choose uninitialized async, and in here now we say our result is await HTTP, await again, there it is. Okay, now we're talking. HTTP get from JSON async list contact API contacts, and then map. Okay, what's happening here? Oh, forgot the angle brackets. Now this works. And here again, if the result is not null, then we say contacts is our results. Awesome, that's it. And now the map. Now first, maybe let's have a quick look here. You see how this works. We've got the SfMaps component. Could use it, but it won't show anything here. We need JSON data. And the great thing is that Syncfusion provides data for you. So let me just copy this here and paste it, save this, restart the app. And now here we see, hopefully, yeah, there it is. So with that, you already get this beautiful map. Well, there's not much we can do here. We can't zoom in. We don't see any markers or anything. Of course, you'll change that here next now. But what I want to do first is actually change the look here, because maybe you've seen it already. There are a couple of providers you could also use. For instance, Bing Maps, right? Looks like that. Then Azure Maps looks like that. This is great. But for that, I think you need keys, API keys. Yeah, there it is. Subscription key. I'm not sure if you can use it for free. So bear with me here. Maybe you know more, then please write it down in the comments. But what we can definitely use is the OpenStreetMap here. So let's just copy this, because I'm really lazy or too lazy to type this in here. So now let's save this again, and wait, we have to restart it. Restart the application. And now in a second we see, yeah, I think this looks better. Of course, now we have, well, it is repeating, but that's not really an issue, because we are going to zoom into the maps on initialization in a minute. So let's just implement that. All right, again, we can look up documentation for even more features, and you see it here. There's lots and lots of stuff like markers, bubble, legend, customization, lots and lots of possibilities here. So let me just close this and just implement a few simple features. We've got our layer already, and the next thing I want to do is actually add map markers, and for that we need the maps marker settings. So maps marker settings it is, and in here now we put our markers. So maps marker, we set the visibility to true. All right, and now here almost what I want to do is we can change the shape of this thing, for instance. Does it suggest anything? No, not really. So then it'll be Syncfusion, Blazor, and then maps marker type. And then you see it here, circle, horizontal line, inverted triangle, whatever you want. Let's just use the circle here. Then the data source is just the contacts, and this is great, right? This is our complete list, and it will do everything you want to see here. All the markers will be placed automatically on the map. We can set the height to 25, for instance, also the width, and then the value here, the type actually is contact, and this is our marker. All right, and now one more thing I would like to add is, when I remove the angle bracket here, maps marker tooltip settings. So we can also add tooltips, for instance. Love that. So let's do that. Maps marker tooltip settings. We say we want to see tooltips, so let's set this to true. And let me just fix that real quick. Contacts, and a value path should be the place. So we want to see the place as a tooltip here, and that's that. So maybe save that first and have a look. Get an error. Okay, what's going on here? All right, let me have a quick look here. Maybe it was something is wrong with the, no, actually Malibu, Dayton, New York City, and the values are set because I got this error before. Oh, I see the problem. Maps layer, this actually has to go down here. And now this should work. Let me just refresh. This looks way better, right? So now we've got Malibu, Dayton, and New York City. But again, I want to zoom in here because with that doesn't look that nice. So let's go back real quick And in here now, we say maps zoom, not tomb, zoom settings. We enable this. Just say, yeah, please, I want to enable the user to map, to zoom in to the map. Jesus, it's late again. And one more thing I want to do is I want to zoom in initially, so it is zoomed into all the markers. And for that, what we can do is we set the horizontal alignment to Syncfusion Blazor, and then maps alignment, and then near, and then also should zoom initially to true. All right, so this should be it. Save that, restart the application, and there we are. We've got Malibu here, Dayton, Ohio, and New York City. And with the mouse wheel, I can zoom in, zoom out. I can move the map, and also I can use these controls here. Isn't that great? So in a couple of minutes, you get a fully functional map in your application. Isn't that great? Now, make sure to check out the links in the video description to get access to the beautiful Syncfusion Blazor components. The complete source code is available on GitHub, and for more videos like this one, make sure to subscribe, like, and tell me what you want to see in the comments. Take care.